Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 7 in the book of John, the Gospel of John. Today, title is Dwelling with Flesh. So yesterday we put ourselves before great truths. He chose us before we chose him, and that no one comes to the Father by accident, and that he's been busy before the ages. So before it dawns on us that we should receive him, he's been at work on our behalf for many, many, many dawns. So we've been in his eyes and specifically on his radar since the dawn of the world. All right, so one verse today, kind of following up with that, and it's from John chapter 1, verse 14. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We've seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. So God shows up. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. God shows up, and he shows up here. And he shows up among us. He shows up in flesh. He chooses to share our human nature. It's detailed a little bit in Philippians chapter 2, verse 6. Though he was in the form of God, he didn't count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but he emptied himself, taking on the form of a servant, born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. So he was in the form of God, he was God, and yet he did not hold on to those divine privileges. He temporarily yielded his divine prerogatives and voluntarily divested himself of position and rights. He emptied himself all the way down to humanity. Now, this was an inconvenient trip. It had with it ended with a very difficult ending of suffering and crucifixion, and he knew it all along. He knew it was going to happen at least from the time of the garden. So he became a willing servant to humanity by being a willing servant. He's born in the likeness of men. The Word became flesh. It was purposeful. He purposely found himself in human form. It wasn't by accident. And then it was characterized by humility and obedience. So let's think about why. Remember in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 16, it says, "For surely it is not angels that he helps, but he helps the offspring of Abraham. Therefore, he had to be made like his brothers in every respect, so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in the servants of God, to make propitiation for the sins of the people. For because he himself has suffered when tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted." So he's made like us to be among us. He's made like us to be merciful to us. He's made like us to be a sin fixer for us. He got humbled all the way down to us to humble himself for us. He dwelt among us to help those who are being tempted today. So this makes all the difference in the world, that that on that day of judgment, and we need him for righteousness and payment of penalties, and he's there for us. We're all going to need some help to balance the scale of justice on that day. But beyond that, the Word became flesh, and it makes all the difference for us on this day. So if you're like me and you have a day of difficulty and you need desperately one who was made like his brothers in every respect, why? Well, so he can help not just on that cosmic ending day, but on this practical day. He is able to help. Are you being tempted? He's able to help. Do you ache for mercy? He is able to help. Do you require the services of a faithful minister in the service of God? He is able to help. And if you're not an angel, he's able to help. If you have a problem with sin, he is able to help. If you are made of flesh, he is able to help because he made himself flesh. If you've not been able to make it to heaven by your words or your deeds, be of good cheer. He made his dwelling among us. He's able to help. Now I ask all who see this with eyes of flesh and hear it with ears of flesh, how shall we respond to this news? May I humbly suggest, I believe. May I also humbly suggest that I'm relieved. I'm grateful. I desperately need mercifulness and help and access to the God who came all the way down to actually be of some help. I need actually what he's offering. So why might I trust God? Let me tell you just one thing about him, one idea, that he let go of many, many spectacularly deserved privileges. He emptied himself. He came down. He was born in the likeness of man. He was found in human form. The Word became flesh. He dwelt among us. Why? To help. To who? To you. Why? Because you desperately need it. So how does he do this? He does this by serving you, by being merciful to you, to help you with temptation, to help in your suffering. The Word became flesh, and that has made all the difference.